The manila envelope sat on the kitchen table, a stark, pale rectangle against the worn wood. Elara stood in the doorway of her own kitchen, the smell of damp October air clinging to her nurse's scrubs. She was worn out, a bone-deep exhaustion that had nothing to do with her part-time job and everything to do with the manila envelope. Beside her, on the dated counter, sat a pile of medical bills, a constant, suffocating reminder of their struggle. Her son, Leo, sat quietly in his wheelchair near the window, watching the last of the chilly afternoon leaves fall. At 7 years old, he was already too aware of the tension that filled their small rented house. The front door opened, letting in another gust of cold air. Marcus walked in. He was impeccably dressed, exuding an entitlement that didn't belong in their working-class Ohio suburb. He wasn't alone. Through the screen door, Elara could see a new, shiny car at the curb, and a woman waiting inside. "You found it," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Elara's hands trembled. "Marcus, what is this? We can talk about this. Think about Leo." Marcus scoffed, a cold, impatient sound. "That's just it, Elara. I'm tired of this." He gestured vaguely around the clean but faded room. Tired of the bills, the appointments, tired of this burden. His eyes settled on Leo. Leo flinched and turned his wheelchair back toward the window. "Marcus, no," Elara whispered, the word catching in her throat. He looked back at her, his expression not angry, but worse, filled with a dismissive pity. "Let's be honest, Elara. What are you going to do without me? A black woman with a disabled kid in this town? You'll be lucky to get by." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stack of cash, throwing it on the table next to the envelope. "This is it. Don't call me." Elara couldn't move, couldn't speak. She just watched the man she had loved for 10 years walk out of their lives. The front door slammed shut, finalizing the abandonment. The sound echoed in the silent, chilly house. She stood there for a long time, the silence broken only by the quiet whir of Leo's chair. He wheeled himself over, his small warm hand resting on her arm as she finally collapsed against the counter, sobbing. Later that evening, as Elara stared at the meager pile of cash, her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gable, knocked, holding a small, steaming casserole dish. "I saw him leave, dear," she says softly. "That man, he never deserved you or that sweet boy." What a powerful and enraging moment. Marcus showed his true colors, dismissing Elara because of her race and his own son as a burden. But that one simple act of kindness from Mrs. Gable proves that good people are still out there, even in the darkest times. If you are still watching and you are standing with Elara, please comment with the number 8 below to show you're here with her. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the perfect time to join the Black King family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of Elara's incredible journey. Your support helps us continue to create powerful content that informs and inspires you. Now, let's see what happens next. 3 days after Marcus left, the only mail Elara received wasn't another bill, but a thick, cream-colored envelope from a law firm in Boston. It had sat on the counter for 2 days, unopened. Elara almost ignored it, assuming it was just another collections agency trying to find Marcus. She knew he had debts, gambling debts he thought he'd hidden, but she had no energy left to deal with his messes. The house felt emptier, colder, and the persistent October rain streaking down the kitchen windows only made the atmosphere heavier. Leo was at the kitchen table, quietly trying to do his homework. He was trying so hard to be brave for her. Seeing his effort, Elara finally picked up the envelope. It was addressed to Ms. Elara Hayes. Not Michaels. Hayes. Her maiden name. It was from the estate of Eleanor Hayes. Her hands began to shake. Aunt Eleanor? She'd only met her eccentric, wealthy great-aunt twice in her entire life. With a confusing mix of dread and curiosity, she tore it open. It was full of dense legal jargon, but her eyes snagged on a single line and then a number. The primary beneficiary of the estate. Total estate value is approximately $150 million. $150 million. Elara read it 3 times, the numbers blurring. This had to be a mistake. A cruel joke. But enclosed was a personal handwritten note on expensive stationery. "My dear Elara," it read. "If you're reading this, I've finally kicked the bucket. Don't let the bastards get you down. I've watched you from afar. I know about the challenges you face. I always knew you were a fighter. Be remarkable. With love, Aunt Eleanor. Still trembling, Elara found the law firm's website on her phone and dialed the number for a video call. A kind, professional man in his late 50s answered. Mr. Morrison, she asked. Miss Hayes. Elara. Thank you for calling. His voice was warm, a stark contrast to Marcus's coldness. I'm Robert Morrison. First, my condolences. Your aunt was very fond of you. And yes, Miss Hayes, what you read is entirely real. He gently confirmed everything. Elara felt dizzy, leaning against the counter for support. Mr. Morrison, Robert said, his tone serious. Your aunt was very specific. She warned that money changes people. I advise you to tell no one. Not yet. As she hung up the call, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was Marcus. Hope you're not struggling too much. Did you sign the papers? I need them finalized ASAP. Elara looked at the arrogant text from the man who had dismissed her as worthless. Then she looked at the $150 million confirmation on her laptop. The tears that welled in her eyes were no longer from sadness, but from a cold, quiet, and righteous determination. She picked up her phone, but instead of replying to Marcus, she called Robert Morrison back. Mr. Morrison, she says, her voice steady. Can you recommend the most ruthless divorce attorney money can buy? 1 month later, Marcus sat whistling in his lawyer's drab office, eager to sign away his shackles. The room was sterile, with fluorescent lights humming overhead, and smelled faintly of stale coffee. Elara sat across from him, looking composed but tired. It was a look he expected. He saw the same worn-out coat, the same weary expression. He didn't notice her shoes, which were understated, Italian leather, and cost more than his entire suit. Marcus's lawyer, a man who looked as budget-friendly as his office, quickly reviewed the terms. It's all standard, the lawyer said, shuffling papers. Elara waives all rights to any future earnings or assets of Mr. Michaels. Marcus agrees to minimal child support for Leo, as required by the state. Blah, blah, blah. Marcus wasn't listening. He was impatient, checking his watch. His flight to Portland with Stephanie was in 2 days. See, he smirked at Elara, picking up the pen. Quick and easy. No hard feelings, Laura. It's just business. He signed his name with a flourish, the most expensive mistake he would ever make. Elara picked up the pen, her hand perfectly steady, and signed Elara Hayes. The divorce was finalized. The next day, Elara and Leo pulled up to a stunning, modern, single-story home nestled in a wealthy, wooded suburb. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating warm hardwood floors. Mom. Leo breathed, his eyes wide. The house was designed for accessibility. Leo wheeled himself down a wide hallway into a massive bedroom, painted his favorite color, blue. It had an attached, fully accessible bathroom and a lift system. Mom, is this ours? Elara knelt beside his chair, her heart full. This is our new start, baby. But it wasn't her first stop. Earlier that morning, Elara had visited the small, struggling community center Mrs. Gable volunteered at, the one that ran the after-school program Leo used to attend. Posing as a representative for a new anonymous foundation, Elara met the director. The Leo's Light Foundation would like to make a donation, Elara said calmly, sliding a check across the desk. The director looked down and gasped. It was for $100,000. In the back room, Mrs. Gable, who was sorting donated coats, overheard the director's cry. She saw the check and burst into tears of joy, whispering, "It's a miracle. We can keep the doors open." She had no idea her miracle was the quiet, struggling woman she had given a casserole to just 1 month before. That night, in her new home, Elara unpacked a box labeled Memories. She pulled out a small, framed photo of her and Marcus, taken years ago. She looked at it for a long, quiet second, seeing the stranger he had become. Or perhaps, the stranger he had always been. She walked to the grand, stone fireplace and dropped the photo into the new flames, watching the past turn to ash. Elara's phone rings. It's the headmistress of Riverside Academy, the best private school in the state. Ms. Hayes, we're delighted to confirm Leo's enrollment and therapy schedule. Welcome to our community. What an incredible move by Elara. She finalized the divorce, secured a new, accessible home for Leo, and her very first act was to anonymously give back to her community by saving Mrs. Gable's center. That is true strength and class. If you are still watching and you are inspired by Elara's powerful new start, please comment with the number 8 below to show your support. This story is just getting heated up, and you won't want to miss what happens when Marcus finds out the truth. If you're not already part of the Black King family, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support helps us continue to create amazing content just like this to inform and inspire you. Now, let's see what happens when Marcus finally figures out what he threw away. 6 months later, Marcus stared at his laptop screen in a cramped, gray cubicle in Portland. The headline, almost unbelievable: "The Anonymous Angel, Local Philanthropist Endows $20 million Therapy Center." His new life in Oregon was not the dream he'd envisioned. The job paid less than he'd expected. Stephanie complained constantly about their tiny apartment, and his gambling debts were creeping up again. Just then, his boss walked by and tapped his watch, a silent, sharp reminder that Marcus was late on his reports. He ignored his boss. His eyes were glued to the screen. The article featured a polished, professional photo of Elara, standing at a podium, looking confident and powerful. It was the same woman he had dismissed as having no future without him. He frantically clicked, finding article after article. Elara Hayes, founder of Leo's Light Foundation, builds a state-of-the-art facility. The Hayes Grant provides full scholarships. And then he saw it, a mention of her inheritance, estimated at $150 million. He did the math. The dates. The inheritance letter must have arrived before he signed the divorce papers. He remembered how calm she was, how willing to let him go. She knew. He drove home, ignoring Stephanie's yells about the rent. His mind was racing, a toxic mix of greed and wounded pride. "She tricked me," he whispered to the empty room. That? He used a racial slur under his breath. "She tricked me." He felt cheated. He was entitled to that. He had put up with her and that kid for years. He found Elara's new number. He'd charmed it out of her unsuspecting mother weeks ago, claiming he needed to discuss Leo's medical bills. He texted, "We need to talk. You lied to me. I'm Tyler's father. I'm entitled to half of that money." Miles away, Elara sat in a sleek boardroom, discussing the schematics for her second therapy center. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the text, read the name, and scoffed. Without a moment's hesitation, she deleted the message and blocked the number. Back in Portland, Marcus watched his phone. No reply. Delivered, but ignored. The arrogance. The disrespect. The woman he had walked away from was ignoring him. Furious, he picked up his phone again, but this time he called his cut-rate lawyer. "I want to sue my ex-wife. She hid $150 million from me." Elara had never been in a courtroom, but she walked into the deposition hearing not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of a CEO. The legal conference room was high-end, all glass and polished mahogany, smelling of expensive leather. Marcus was already there, sitting next to his cut-rate lawyer, looking haggard and cheap in his old suit. His eyes widened when Elara entered, flanked not by one, but 2 high-powered attorneys, led by the sharp and precise Catherine. This was clearly not the struggling, intimidated woman he was expecting. Marcus's lawyer nervously presented his case, arguing that Elara had fraudulently hidden assets during the divorce proceedings. Catherine didn't even stand. She calmly waited for him to finish, then placed a single folder on the table. "Mr. Michaels filed for divorce on October 1st, she stated, her voice cutting through the room. Miss Hayes received notification of her inheritance on October 4th. The divorce, which Mr. Michaels repeatedly pushed to expedite, was finalized on October 30th. She looked directly at Marcus. "The inheritance is, by law, separate property. There was no fraud. There is no case." She knew. Marcus suddenly blurted out, slamming his fist on the table. "She knew she was getting that money, and she let me walk away." Catherine slowly raised an eyebrow, her expression icy. "Yes, Mr. Michaels. You chose to walk away from your wife and disabled son. My client simply allowed you to. The court dismisses your claim." Furious and utterly humiliated, Marcus stormed out of the room. 2 days later, Elara's phone lit up with alerts. A sleazy gossip blog, desperate for clicks, had posted a new article. Father speaks out, my ex-wife stole millions while our disabled son suffers. The article was a masterpiece of fabrication, painting Marcus as a loving father cheated by a vindictive, greedy woman. Worse, it featured an old, unauthorized photo of Leo. Elara read it, her blood boiling at the malicious lies and the exploitation of her son. Her PR team called immediately, asking how she wanted to respond to the smear campaign. Elara looks at her new partner, Samuel, a kind, brilliant architect she had met while designing the first therapy center. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. We don't just respond, she says, her voice low and dangerous. We hit back. File the defamation suit. And Catherine? I want to talk about sole custody. He's not just desperate anymore, he's dangerous. The final courtroom felt different. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about a child's future. Marcus, now facing a defamation suit, a DUI conviction, and impending bankruptcy, looked broken and pathetic. He sat with a public defender who seemed resigned to defeat. Elara sat tall and strong, with Samuel at her side. In the row behind them sat Mrs. Gable, who had insisted on coming to support the woman she now knew as her community's greatest benefactor. Marcus's lawyer weakly argued that Elara's immense wealth was harmful and unstable for Leo. When it was Catherine's turn, she was systematic. She presented the facts: Marcus's history of abandonment, his racist and discriminatory language toward his own family, his complete failure to pay child support, and his criminal record. Your Honor, Catherine concluded, Mr. Michaels didn't want his son when he was a burden. He only wants him now that his mother is wealthy. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Reynolds, frowned. I'd like to hear from Leo, she said. Leo, now 8 years old and visibly more confident, wheeled himself forward. He looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, he said, his voice clear, my dad left because he said I was too much trouble. He said I'd never be normal. But my mom told me I'm remarkable. She helps lots of other kids like me. I want to stay with my mom. And with Samuel. They're my real family. The judge's expression softened as she listened to Leo, then hardened as she turned to Marcus. Mr. Michaels, I've heard enough, she declared. Your motion is denied with prejudice. You are a danger to this child's stability. I am terminating your parental rights due to abandonment and instability, and you will be responsible for Ms. Hayes's legal fees. Marcus sat frozen, utterly defeated, as a bailiff escorted him out. Months later, Elara and Samuel stood in their beautiful, sunlit backyard, surrounded by friends. Mrs. Gable sat in the front row, beaming. Leo, dressed in a sharp little tuxedo, wheeled down the aisle as the ring-bearer, holding the rings on a satin pillow. As Elara, radiant in her wedding dress, began to say her vows, her phone buzzed. It was a final text alert from Catherine. Marcus has filed for bankruptcy. It's over. Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes Samuel. Elara read the text, a small, final smile touching her lips. She deleted the text, blocked the number, and put her phone away forever. She turned to Samuel, took his hands, and kissed her new husband.